In a quiet part of Canada, deep in a snowy forest, lived two children named Pierre and Estelle. They were twins and looked very much alike. They had big, bright eyes and curly hair that danced in the wind. They shared a strong bond and were best friends. They would play together all day, laughing and having fun. But their lives changed forever after a terrible spring storm took away their parents. Their parents died in the storm, leaving them alone in the world. The storm was fierce, with strong winds and heavy rain that lasted for days. After the storm passed, Pierre and Estelle felt lost and sad. After the tragedy, they moved with their grandmother to a small, cozy cottage in the woods. Their grandmother was kind and loving. She took care of them, but she was also very sad about their parents. The children felt safe with her, even though they missed their parents dearly. The cottage was small, surrounded by tall trees and soft snow. It was warm and inviting, and it gave them comfort after their loss. The forest around them was big and cold, but they made it their home. The tall trees seemed to touch the sky, and the ground was always covered in a white blanket of snow during winter. The twins loved exploring the forest. They would wander through the trees, playing hide and seek and making snowmen during winter. Even though they were isolated, the children and their grandmother found peace there. They didn't have much money, but they were happy. All summer, they caught fish from nearby streams, picked berries, and found eggs from birds. They would sit by the stream, watching the fish swim, and they learned to catch them with their bare hands. They didn't need much else. As long as they were together, they felt safe and loved. As summer ended and autumn faded into winter, food became scarce. The forest no longer gave them its treasures. The berries were gone, the birds had flown away, and the streams froze over. Their supplies ran low, and worry filled their little home. The grandmother, growing weak and sick, needed food to regain her strength. She would often sit by the fire, staring at the flickering flames, feeling tired and weak. One cold evening, as the fire crackled softly, the grandmother called the twins to her side. Her voice was weak, but full of love. She looked into their eyes, which were filled with worry. "Children," she said, her voice trembling, "I need warm broth, meat broth, to get better. Without it, I may not last much longer." Her words filled them with fear. They loved their grandmother dearly. She was all they had left in the world. With tears in her eyes, Estelle looked at Pierre, who nodded with determination. "Don't worry, grandmother," Pierre said, his voice steady but nervous. "We'll find you food. We'll go into the forest tomorrow. You'll get better. I promise." Estelle held her grandmother's hand tightly, feeling a mix of fear and hope in her heart. The twins shared a determined look. They had to do something for their beloved grandmother. The next morning, as the first light peeked through the trees, Pierre and Estelle dressed in their warmest clothes. They wore scarves and hats that their grandmother had stitched together with care. They packed what little food they had left, a small piece of bread, a tin cup for gathering water, and some walking sticks. They made sure to wear warm boots, too, so their feet wouldn't get cold in the snow. Before they left, their grandmother placed her hands on their heads, saying a blessing. She watched them go into the snowy woods, feeling a mix of hope and fear. "Be safe, my children," she whispered as they disappeared among the trees. The forest was vast, and as the twins walked deeper, it grew quieter. Snow crunched under their boots, and the cold bit into their cheeks. They searched for any signs of animals to catch for food, but the forest seemed empty. They listened for the sounds of birds or rustling leaves, but heard nothing. Hours passed, and the sun began to set, casting long shadows in the snow. The temperature dropped, and they began to feel cold and tired. Just when they were about to lose hope, they saw a flickering lantern in the distance. It was the butcher's shop, and they could smell meat cooking. They had heard strange stories about the butcher. Some said he was cruel and had a bad reputation in the village. The twins exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they should go inside. But they were cold and hungry, and they had no other choice. They approached the shop cautiously, feeling a mix of hope and fear. When they reached the door, they knocked softly. The butcher, a big man with a rough face, greeted them with a wide smile that made them uneasy. "Come in! Come in!" he said, his voice gruff but inviting. The warmth inside was comforting, and the smell of meat filled the air. The butcher noticed their hunger and pretended to be kind. "Are you looking for something to eat?" he asked, leaning over the counter with a curious look. Pierre and Estelle explained their need for meat broth for their sick grandmother. The butcher listened and nodded, pretending to care. He asked them to wait as he went to the back of the shop. While they waited, the children looked around, their hearts racing. They noticed the shelves lined with various meats, and the air felt heavy with a strange smell. Suddenly, the butcher returned, a sly smile on his face. He grabbed them without warning, knocking them out with a quick move. Darkness surrounded them as they fell unconscious. When they woke up, they found themselves trapped in a barrel filled with icy water. Panic filled their hearts as they realized the butcher intended to eat them. They were terrified, but they refused to give up. They looked around, trying to find a way to escape. But in their fear, they remembered the wooden whistles given to them by an old man in the forest. The man had told them that the whistles could call for help in times of danger. With what little strength they had, they blew the whistles, hoping someone would hear them. They blew the whistles as hard as they could, their hearts pounding with fear. "Please, someone hear us!" Estelle cried, her voice echoing in the darkness. Miles away, St. Nicholas was traveling through the forest with a sack of gifts when he heard the faint sound of the whistles. His heart ached as he recognized the call for help. Following the sound, he rushed to the butcher's shop and knocked on the door. Startled, the butcher opened the door to find St. Nicholas standing tall and strong, dressed in warm, colorful robes. Nicholas looked him in the eye with a serious expression. "I've come for the children," he said firmly, his voice echoing with authority. The butcher realized he couldn't fight against St. Nicholas and tried to stall. "They are not here," he said quickly, trying to hide his fear. But Nicholas was quick. He found the barrel where the children were hidden and broke it open with a single powerful move. He pulled Pierre and Estelle out, wrapping them in his warm cloak. The warmth revived them, and they looked up at him with gratitude and relief. "You're safe now," he said softly, smiling down at them. As they left the shop, they could hear the sound of justice being served. The butcher would harm no more. St. Nicholas took them back to their grandmother, who was waiting anxiously at the cottage. When she saw her grandchildren return, her eyes filled with tears of joy. She hugged them tightly, never wanting to let go. "I was so worried," she exclaimed, her voice shaking with emotion. The twins quickly explained everything that had happened, and their grandmother listened with wide eyes. Nicholas smiled and shared some of the food he had brought with him. He prepared a delicious broth for their grandmother, who eagerly drank it, feeling her strength return. With every sip, her energy grew, and the warmth spread through her body. "Thank you, Saint Nicholas," she said gratefully. "You have saved us all." Their family was whole again, filled with thanks for the miracle that saved them. The children learned that even in the darkest times, help could come from unexpected places. As they sat around the fire, sharing stories and laughter, they felt grateful for their loving family. They promised never to forget the adventure they had and the kindness of St. Nicholas. The snowy forest around them was filled with warmth, and they knew they would always look out for each other. From that day on, Pierre and Estelle had a new appreciation for life. They learned to be brave, to always help those in need, and to cherish their time together. The forest became a place of joy and adventure, full of memories they would share forever. And every winter, they would celebrate the kindness that had saved their lives, keeping the spirit of St. Nicholas in their hearts.